Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by ASIO Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 277, I believe. Don, this episode's going to air on June 15th. We're already halfway through June. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, but I will first want to talk about, I just saw you last night. We made a quick run to Illinois and spent the day with you with some special guests. Let's talk about that to kick off the show because I'm really excited for one of our podcast listeners.
Yeah, we met with two podcast listeners, actually, and one of them bought a company that we've been associated with in the past, and the other one actually is it the sales manager for that company?
Right.
Two great guys. We spent most of the day with them. I think we got in the truck finally to go home. We'd spent 7 hours with them. These guys, I guess we might as well say it, they bought Novix tree stands, and oh man, when they reached out to us about, working together, I was excited because I'm still using Novix. I've been using Novix even though they weren't a sponsor there for a while. I still was using their stands. In fact, I just made a social media post the other day. I hung one for a spot I'm going to hunt this fall, and got a few more in my shed there that I plan on putting out. But we spent the entire day with them. We took them up to Yoder's restaurant in Arthur and had lunch. I gave him a brief tour of my farm on the side-by-side. We went to the Real World in Green Prairie seed facility and gave him the tour there. And then we went to Ocall Valley Orchard, and that's where Mike's Mighty Micros is bottled. And Mike Mitchell and his wife Jennifer run that orchard. So we got to meet Mike and got a tour of the orchard with these guys. And it was a great day for them and us both, I think. It was for us, I know. I hope it was for them.
Yeah, Jeff is a podcast listener from southern Indiana. If people watch some outdoor hunting, I think he films a little bit for Whitetail Edge, but Novix has gone through quite a few owners over the years, and when we were partnered with him, a very good friend of ours named Jeff Weaver owned the company, and we were doing everything we could to help him through a tough situation. We'll just leave it at that. But as the ownerships changed, we just kind of stepped back away, but we've continued to use these stands. I think every tree stand lock-on stand we have. You did a video not too long ago for Chasing Giants TV and showed the placement of a Novix tree stand up in it. So when we got the call, you and I didn't know who they even were. It was just we knew that there was a new owner or someone whose ownership, and the sales manager reached out to us. And man, when we sat down and met these guys, they're huge podcast fans. They've listened to the show for a long time and quickly learned, number one, that these guys want to run this business being bold about their faith. I couldn't be more proud of one of our listeners who's a good Christian, not a fake Christian that wants to use it to sell, but this guy's the real deal. He's a Marine veteran, and these stands are still made in the U.S. So you got 3 big check marks for us: made in the USA, veteran owned, and good Christian men.
Well, and actually, they're made in Indiana in an Amish facility. There's Amish folks putting these together, but these are exactly the kind of people that we want to partner with, and we've talked about this before. We look at two things when it comes to sponsorships or affiliations with other people in the industry. First is the product itself. Is it something that we use? We're not going to promote anything that we're not using. And the second thing is the people behind that product. If it's not first quality people, then we're not going to sponsor it no matter how good their product is. So those two kind of got to mesh. So we got a great product line here, product line we've already been using for years. And then these guys, first-class people, Christians. Jeff's a veteran, Marine, as you mentioned. I told them guys, I said, I'll just be transparent with you. Before we had our meeting, I did some investigation of my own and looking into these guys and searched their name on the internet, see what I could find out. And the thing that impressed me, I went to Jeff's Facebook page, and his profile photo was him on his wedding day, and all the the groomsmen and such were all in their marine, I don't know what they call the attire, their dress attire, but that's how his groomsmen were dressed, and we have total respect for the military who give us our freedom. So it was just a fantastic meeting, and I came away from it really excited about the future because there was a lot of different things discussed that we're not going to talk about today, and probably won't for a few weeks anyway. But there's just a lot of opportunities to work together here that we're excited about.
Yeah, it's I want to celebrate one of our listeners who's been a successful businessman getting the opportunity to buy a business, and that's the message here. Whether it comes out that they're a sponsor later or not, we're going to do everything we can to help these folks be successful. Again, it's a product that we've used from the very beginning and never stopped using, but at the end of the day, one of our listeners got to buy a business, and it's a Christian company, Christian people ahead of it. For those of you who don't know, one of our friends, Emily Shad, which I don't remember her married name. I think Shad is her conkler. That's it. We've known her since before she went to work for Novix, and kind of made that connection for her back. You did, but she's a writer for Outdoor Life. So the opportunity to connect with her again is exciting, but man, I just want to celebrate that situation. He just closed on the company, and just so happy for those guys and bright future ahead of them. I don't know. It makes me happy that somebody's able to chase their dream like this guy is. And when we went to Mike's Mitchell's place, I just saw the grin in his eyes because he's talking, the same things we talk about on this podcast. How can I take my property to the next level? Asking questions about tree plantings, and you guys walking around with a basket of strawberries because you kept saying it was the best strawberry you'd ever tasted, trying to get me to eat one, which I didn't.
Yeah, that was the best part of the whole tour of the orchard was that Mike had a basket of strawberries that we ate them till they was gone, Jeff and Dwayne and I, and you didn't eat any, but then we came back into the orchard store, I guess, or shop, whatever you call it, and Mike pulled some apples out of the cooler that had been there since last October. And those were fantastic apples that had been in storage for 6 months or more, not more than 6 months, probably 7, 8 months now. They've been in storage. You remember the name of those apples, the variety? I don't remember.
Oh boy, no, I don't remember.
They were good, whatever they were, but
still crispy, really juicy. I mean, Mike's place is second to none. He's got kind of like one of these fall festival places that's just packed during the fall, but they got to hear all about the micronutrients and how basically Mike's formula is helping everything in that little mini ecosystem work together to balance everything out. And it was really cool. I did some video footage. We'll hopefully have some of that on Chasing Giants TV this upcoming week, where Mike talks about even planting the row of strawberries underneath of the apple trees, how those help each other, and some of the little science behind it. Mike did a really good job explaining it, that it wasn't kind of over my head when it comes to the science part of it. But, some of these trees, the growth that he's getting with his application and method, not only in the soil, but on the leaves, it's pretty impressive. So to Jeff and Dwayne, especially Jeff, who is the owner now of Novix, congratulations, my friend. There's nothing better than getting a podcast listener and someone in our Chasing Giants family chasing their dreams and being successful with an acquisition with this company. We're really happy for you, especially when it's a brand that we like and we use. So congratulations.
Well, we celebrate the success of others. We're not jealous. We're not haters. We love to see people successful. So hats off to both those guys.
All right, well, let's celebrate another success, and that's Mr. Joe Miles. We're going to try to have him on the show, I believe, next week to come on here, because this episode will air on Sunday. On Monday, it looks like there's a big release of a bunch of products on their website. So ASIOgear.com, make sure you go out. All of the 2025 products are going to be available for pre-sale if they're not in stock. And Joe's got some big news that's been teased on social media that he wants to go over, but I'm interested in this cat that he killed in, was it Zimbabwe or?
I don't know, one of them places
one
I'm
of those
never
countries.
going to.
he held this cat up, and I was chatting with him the other day, and he said that this was, out of all the international hunts that he's ever been on, this was the closest to a big mature buck hunt that he'd ever been on. The only exception is this cat's big enough it would eat him. So if you haven't seen this cat, it's not just a normal like leopard or mountain lion. This thing is, I think they call them the cattle killers of Zimbabwe.
It is a leopard, though, isn't it?
It's some type of it, but it's a different one. The size of these things are just huge.
Well, did you see that Chris Yates got one also?
Yeah, I did see that just got posted. He posted this picture of the sun behind this tree, and I asked him if he was on the set of Lion King, because that's the only thing I could see is that opening scene of the movie Lion King with that African sunset. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he texted me a couple pictures today of it, and yeah, he got a big cat too. I mean, it's a big one. I mean, barely get his arms around it and hold it up. And Joe
I don't know,
and Chris
man.
both are big guys, you know. It's not like they're little midgets, and these cats look as big as they are. They look like, literally, these cats look like they weigh over 200 pounds.
I don't know. I mean, we've kind of both given our life to understanding whitetail, and I have nothing wrong with, guys going out and killing other stuff, but, man, I just don't know that I want to hunt something that's hunting me at the same time.
Well, I don't want to leave this country. The world's a mess, and I wouldn't even go to Canada right now, so.
Especially this week. It's been an interesting week for that.
Yeah,
but anyway,
are going nuts.
We're going to try to have Joe on next week for a quick segment to tell us what's going on with this big news with ASIO, talk about this big cat. I want to hear the story of this thing. It sounds pretty amazing, and we'll be right back after this. And let's talk about whether it's related to food plots, because we're getting a lot of questions on that. We'll be right back.
ASIO Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. ASIO Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit ASIOgear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. ASIO Gear, prepare to be invisible.
Okay, thanks to ASIO. But Don, let's take a good bit of time. We have some great questions this week. But right before we got on to record today, you made mention of something. You said that you need rain. And when I left your house this week, I stopped at kind of the area where we have a couple different farms that we hunt. And it's within an hour of your house. So a little bit south and east. And that area has been just torrential downpours. The crops look absolutely horrible. The farmer that I talked to today is going to be up over 200 acres of replant. But the problem is the corn, they're running out of time to even do the replant because it's so muddy. It's going to take, a while to dry out and then have to work the ground, let it dry out again, and then try to plant back over and replant this corn. Talk a little bit about how just an hour drive time can mean such difference in what crops and food plots are doing right now. This year's been crazy.
It's definitely been a different year. I was up in Peoria, it must have been real early April, and I was up doing a consulting visit, and they were planting corn, multiple fields. Half a dozen fields or so I had seen corn planters going that day. And a month later at home, there was nothing planted. And Peoria is north of me by a good hour and a half. And so what happened this spring was we were kind of like on the dividing line. North of us was fairly dry. Right in my area was about ideal. But you get south of me just a little bit, and it was wet as could be. And, we would get a forecast for an inch of rain, and here at home we'd get a half inch. If we got a forecast for a half inch, we'd get 2/10. And we're not in a drought here at my place by any means, but we could definitely use a good inch to 2 inches of rain if it came right. But south of me, they just keep getting hammered and hammered and hammered, and lots of people are not even done yet. So what's going to be crazy is this fall, the farmers up north of me, an hour, 2 hours, they're going to be done, and the farmers to the south of me, who should be done first, aren't even going to be started yet. I heard of a local guy here, not too far from me, that was going to have to replant 430 acres of beans. They just the ground, they planted, the ground crusted over due to the rain, and that bean plant, when it comes up, if it hits that crust, they call it breaking its neck. That bean comes up, curved in a hook, and instead of pushing through the soil, it breaks that bean plant off, and it never comes through the crust, and that's why they've got to replant. But right here in my neighborhood, these crops are a full month behind normal, because during our normal planting time, we just got those steady rains. We never got big rains, but they just kept coming, and there was a couple points where it dried out for a day or so, where farmers got like 1 day, day and a half to plant, and then boom, here comes the next rain. So there are just a small handful of fields that are ahead of the majority, but the majority of the fields in my neck of the woods are about a month behind schedule.
Well,
or average.
I think we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper, but before I forget, I think this is going to be a fascinating topic as we're in October this year because of harvest. And depending on the area that some of our listeners are in, this is going to possibly change harvest date depending on the weather in the fall. So, some areas that get picked really early and all that ag comes out, and then those deer compress into small woodlots and hedgerows, waterways, fence rows, that could be completely shifted to where we could be approaching the rut if we don't get an early frost, and there could still be a lot of standing corn in the ground in late October. I think it's a big possibility that we're going to have to watch and really talk about, as hunting strategies may change because of this.
I think that's definitely going to be the case in southern Illinois. There's definitely going to be corn standing in November. No doubt about it. I mean, we're talking right now, corn in my neighborhood, there's a lot of corn that's just, 4 to 6 inches tall, where typically this time of the year it ought to be waist high or higher. I don't think there's anything waist high right now. There's some that's getting close, but darn little. And like I said, a month behind. Well, mid-October, we got corn standing every year in mid-October. Well, that's going to shift to mid-November because of the month behind. There's definitely going to be corn standing south of me. Now, north of me, I think a lot of it's going to be gone. But
Right.
South of me, there's going to be a lot of corn standing.
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting conversation as we get into this fall. Let's talk specifically about corn growing in wet, cool environments. As I drove across Illinois and Indiana, I noticed a lot of corn that was pretty short, but it was starting to yellow a little bit. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, but historically, when you see stuff yellowing, you think of it having a nitrogen deficiency, but that's not what's going on right now.
Well, a lot of it's cool temperatures, no doubt about it. So corn needs 3 things to grow. It needs heat, more so than most other crops. It needs heat, it needs a lot of nitrogen, and then it needs the moisture from the rain. Well, it's had the moisture, but it's had so much moisture, and it didn't have the heat to go with it. I just told my wife today, I'd like to see 2 inches of rain get to 90 degrees, because that's going to help everything in 1 week. That makes so much difference in the growth of everything in 1 week.
Right.
It'd be unbelievable. But the other thing is we haven't talked about really is the antler growth, how all this is going to affect antler growth. Now, I will say this. I've only got, at this time of year, I don't put my cameras out till the 1st of July, but I've got a couple of spots where I try to monitor trespassers. If I'm ever going to get trespassers, there's a couple locations where they're probably going to hit my property. So I keep a couple of cameras going year round in those spots. And I happened to get a picture of one of my target bucks, potential target bucks this week. And I know it's him because he's got a knot on his side. You know the one I'm talking about. And
Very well.
So it's way too early to make any predictions or anything like that. But he already had bigger brows than he had a year ago. And it looks like there's some other things that he didn't have a year ago that he's going to have this year. And the crazy thing is that the other day I went and changed the card in that camera, and that camera's had that card in it for over a year. And so just today, I finally looked at that card. It's been sitting on my desk, and I finally looked at it today, and I had a picture of that same buck last year on June 18th. Well, as we record this, it's only the 13th. And this buck, 5 days earlier, and actually it was about a week ago when I got his picture. So, 10 days or so earlier, he is ahead of where he was last year 10 days later. Now, part of that can be his age. He'll be 5 this year. He was 4 last year. But, based on that one buck, I've got high hopes for this year. The moisture's been there. The heat has not been there. But that could all change in a hurry. It could turn off hot to, within this coming week and be hot the rest of the summer. I just hope it don't turn off dry.
That's good that you got at least something to get your excitement going a little bit about where this goes, because the footage that we have accumulated of this buck, both you and I, over its life is going to make a really, really cool history or story if you choose to target it and kill it. That's going to be pretty cool.
Well, I've got something in mind, and I'm a long ways from ready to share it yet, but if some things fall into place, I'm going to attempt to do something that's probably never been done by anybody. Yep. In the hunting industry or out of the hunting industry, doesn't matter. I'm going to attempt something that's never been done, and we'll just see if it falls into place.
Yep. All right, so Don, we're the middle of June. Obviously, the goal is for everybody to have their food plots planted already. I mean, we don't. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just people have work, people have lives, people have bad weather. But there's a bunch of people sitting here listening to this podcast right now that don't have their plots out yet. Let's just walk through a couple scenarios. For most parts of the country, we're closing the window pretty close to now on corn, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Corn needs that heat to mature, and it doesn't need the heat so much when it's little, although it does, but when it becomes really critical, is during that pollination stage when it's putting that ear on. It needs moisture for sure. It needs nitrogen for sure. But heat's that kind of the wild card, I guess you would say. And planting this late. The other thing is, when's that first frost going to come? You don't want that first frost to come before that ear is filled out. And as we start getting later and later into the summer and the planting season, we're getting closer and closer to that first frost date. And that's probably the biggest factor.
Right. So if you have corn, get it in. We're right on that window of where even the row crop farmers are worried, the ones that have to do replant, that they're running out of time to even do the replant. So it's tough on those guys because they've already treated their field with a residual, so it's not like they can go in and put a low number soybean in it because they've already sprayed. So it's a lot of farmers probably going to be hurting this year, so that's not good. Soybeans, we talked about this last week. That can go up into early July. You spoke about that. It's not ideal. It's going to probably suffer a little bit on pod production, but we still have time for soybeans, right?
Yeah, I mean, every year in my neighborhood and all across the Midwest is people double crop wheat and soybeans, so the wheat will come out about July 1st, and they'll immediately put a second crop of soybeans in. And I didn't realize it until this week. I had a couple meetings up at Arthur with Dwayne Hopkins, and that one of the varieties of soybeans in our Gen 2 mix is contract grown with a guy that double crops them. So he actually grows one of them after his wheat. So it's not getting planted until first week of July. Now, saying that, I kind of hesitant because I don't want every listener to think, I can wait and I'll do it 4th of July weekend. And 4th of July weekend comes and it's too muddy. They kick the can down to the next weekend, and next thing you know, you're in the middle of July. Yeah. Guys, if you are going to plant soybeans, get them in as soon as possible, but don't think that you can't. You still can, but the earlier you do it, it's to your benefit.
Yeah. And then I'm going to say something out of the box that you might not agree with, but I made an observation with a product last year called Soil Charge, and it's actually designed to be able to frost seed. But I wouldn't hesitate right now, if you were going to have a fall plot, to go ahead and put that in. My plot grew so fast. It's tripled the size of anything else I planted the same day. And the deer are just absolutely smoking it. But again, it's something you're going to terminate in August, early September, and come back with a fall plot. So even though that product is made to be able to frost seed, I think you'd be fine right now if you needed something to help build a little bit of soil and get by with weeds. You got plenty of time to put that product in, or possibly clover.
Well, I would not suggest planting clover simply because, I mean, if you get the right weather, it'll be fine.
Right.
If you get the moisture, but if you don't get the moisture and that seed germinates and is not established very good, dry weather can kill that plant. I totally agree with you on the soil charge. Yeah, you could definitely put it out right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I showed Dwayne Hopkins pictures of how big it was and how the deer are hammering it. And I just got back today, so I haven't gone to the farm. I actually want to go out there and see what they're browsing on, what the tops are nipped off of, and do some tissue analysis of it. But I think it's a fantastic product. I've planted it in the spring, the late spring, early summer, and even in the fall before. There's one other topic that we're getting bombarded with, and I want to touch on it before we move on. And that is, people are not patient when it comes to Miscanthus and Switchgrass. And we're spending hours every day answering these questions. So let's maybe talk about it a little bit and hopefully get the word out.
Yeah, I was on the phone most of the morning answering questions, and a lot of them, and it happens every year. It's not like it's anything new. This time of the year, people have planted their switchgrass a month or so ago, and they're getting nervous because they're not seeing what they think they should, or there's weed competition and or a combination of both. But I had a gentleman today who planted his switchgrass, I think he's 50 some days ago, and he was getting a little bit worried and wanted some reassurance. And so I asked him the whole process he went through, and he did everything right, but he's way north of me. He's right on the Illinois-Wisconsin line. And I told him, I said, well, the thing of it is, you planted this 50 some days ago, but when you planted it, what was the soil temperature? Because that stuff is not going to germinate until the soil is between 60, 65 degrees. So even though he planted it 50 days ago, the first 20, 30 days, it might have done absolutely nothing because the ground temperature was just too cold. So you can't just totally look at the planting date and then think, well, man, I've had it in the ground this many days, I ought to be seeing something. Another thing is planting depth. That's probably the other, with switchgrass, that's probably the other most common reason for failure. A 1/4 inch is deep. 1/8 of an inch is ideal. 1/4 inch is deep. You start getting over a 1/4 inch and you can have some problems. But that's just a couple of the things that I talk about with people every single day on these calls. Be patient. I promise you, every switchgrass planting, unless it's a total failure, just about every switchgrass planting is going to have more switchgrass than what the person thinks. And the same way with Miscanthus. And the thing about Miscanthus that I want to really hammer home is that when it comes up, it's not like you go out there and you plant beans or corn where every one of those seeds comes up at the same rate. You look right down the row and every soybean is 2 inches tall, and then it's 4 inches tall, and it's 6 inches tall, and then it's a foot tall. It doesn't work like that with Miscanthus because you're not planting a seed, you're planting a root that's dormant. And those roots come out of dormancy at different rates. And some of them are going to come out of dormancy almost immediately and start growing. And some of them are going to sit there for, I believe, even months. Not weeks, months. And I've seen it multiple times on my farm and other properties where, you think it's not a total failure, but you think it's a very poor stand. And, I was showing the guys from Novix this week a stand. I said, when I planted this, I would have swore there was less than 5% growth. And that was at the end of the first year. That wasn't like in the middle. That wasn't a month or two after planting. That was at the tail end. That was in the fall of the first year. I thought I had 5% or less survival. And today it's a solid wall. And those guys got to see that. So I promise you, whatever you got with your Miscanthus, whatever you got with your switchgrass, there's more there than you think there is.
I've even had to where at the end of the first year growth, I thought I'm going to have to go back in and replant and fill some of these holes because nothing was there. and then by the end of year 2, it's on. So
Yep.
I get it. I get the anxiety because these products are expensive, they're labor intensive, and, people worry. Did I do something wrong? We don't do this for a living a lot of times, and I get the anxiety and the fear factor about it, but yeah, there's it's not as bad as everybody thinks it's going to be.
No, just be patient, and I promise it's better than you think. We answer these calls every spring. It's not like this is something new this year. We do it every year, and we try to reassure people even before to cut down on some calls. But at the same time, we appreciate everyone's business, and we'll be glad to answer your questions when we can. But be patient.
All right, well, I want to make a quick announcement. I'm really excited that this week will be the release of the first episode of the Chasing Assurance podcast, and it's going to air on YouTube on Wednesday morning. So I want to take just a quick minute and thank a couple people because, to get this train going at the level that we wanted to, we basically had some of our friends who own businesses that stepped up and said that they're going to support it with sponsorship. So the Heartland Financial Group, who is a financial and retirement planning firm with biblical principles. So they teach you how to save your money for retirement, but also tithe and give to mission work and all of that. They're out of Northern Indiana. They are the presenting sponsor of it. But I'm also very, very humbled that Coonless Feeders and their manufacturing company is helping us. Wise Eye Cameras is helping us. And we even have a couple special friends that, even though they're not running it through their business, they're also helping us. So folks like Dr. Aaron Gaines and his wife are basically treating this as some of their giving to present it. And we've got a couple other people that wanted to remain anonymous, so we understand that. So I'm just really excited to connect my dad with all of our listeners. And, I really, really hope that you guys will just give a chance to listen to him. And he's such a good teacher. He's easy to listen to, but most of all, a wealth of knowledge as it comes to us just navigating this battle of faith and belief. Last week we got on a rant about divorce, and we've not gotten more engagement, more phone calls of anything we've ever done on this podcast than this. And I think that a lot of our listeners just really struggle, and that's part of it. And I think this is going to be a great tool. We're going to keep mouthing off on stuff that we normally do on this podcast, but yeah, we got just a ton of feedback backlash from last week's show about that.
Yeah, I spoke in where this all came up was when I spoke at Ohio back on June 3rd. That was 10 days ago, and I've got somebody has reached out, multiple people have reached out to me every single day for 10 days about that topic and offered encouragement. Had 2 people today that I talked to that had words of encouragement about that topic, and I think that encouragement, helps, encourage us to continue what we're doing. Sometimes it seems like we're wasting our time or we're just talking to ourselves, but when we hear from guys, and one of the guys was calling me, I don't remember, it was about, I think it was switchgrass, or it was about something totally unrelated. And he said, while I got you, I want to say something else. He said, I listened to your reply about, I think he's seen the reel that you posted on social media, Terry. And he said, when I heard the beginning of that, he says, I got fired up because I'm divorced and remarried. And he said, the reply that you had, it was just fantastic. And he said it really was encouraging to me to hear you say that. And, basically he's in the same situation that I'm in. And I just appreciate everybody taking the time to encourage us, because there's times when we need it.
Well, we get worried about sometimes going off the rails and not really talking about hunting, and, worried that it's going to have backlash and people will not like it. But then here we get the most feedback and most engagement from that than probably anything we ever did. So,
yep.
It's like you said, we're not scared to answer any question, no matter what it is. You might not like the answer,
yeah,
and you might not like us calling you out, but we'll answer the question. So, all right. Well, I got an idea inspired by our friends and our new friends in the meeting with Novix for our 360 blinds Higgins hot seat question. So, Don, go back in the memory bank, and you're going to have to incriminate yourself a little bit with this question. So, but we all know that you're a safety first kind of guy. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, it's a good thing OSHA didn't follow me around.
Yeah, exactly. But, we have very good equipment these days. Both of us have all Novix tree stands, 360 blinds, and, great, great equipment. But I know early in both of our careers, we did not have the luxury of having all of that really nice equipment. So what is the sketchiest thing you've ever done getting up in a tree, or had happen to you getting up in a tree, that comes to mind while hunting early in your days when you didn't have a nice 360 blind to keep your feet warm, or a rock solid USA built Novix tree stand?
Well, I went through the entire, I don't know if you want to call it tree stand revolution or what. I mean, you guys got to remember, I'm 61 years old. I mean, I remember the Baker climbing stands that were total junk. I mean, they weren't safe whatsoever. I even remember my first stands that I ever hunted from. This is when I was early teenager, not late teens, early teens, and started deer hunting. My dad and I would take an aluminum ladder, and we would, each of us would grab an end of that ladder, but on that ladder we would have 2x4s and 1x and cans of nails and a hand saw and have hammers, on our sides, and we would carry that aluminum ladder across the field, through the woods to where we wanted to build a stand. We would nail little pieces of 2x4 to the tree as steps, and then we'd try to find a tree with a fork, and we would nail a 2x4 on each side of that fork and then put little Ys across there. And one thing about those stands, you didn't move them. You put them in the tree where they was going to stay. It was just boards. But I would hunt out of those things without any safety belt or anything for several years after we built them, and the boards were starting to pull out from the tree growing and things like that. I remember then when I got into my teens and late teens, early 20s, and probably all through my 20s and probably into my 30s, I was like a monkey. I was a tall, skinny guy and fairly athletic. So, with a nail and a piece of rope and I could climb to the top of the highest tree out there. I'd just wrap my arms around a branch and shinny up it, and usually I had my bow in one of my hands while I was doing that. And getting down was sometimes harder than getting up. But I went through the entire gamut of all that. I mean, the closest I ever come to an accident was I was using the screw-in tree steps, a chain-on stand, and the other thing I've done a lot in the past was I would use tree branches as steps, so I would, look at before I climbed up in a tree, I was always looking at branches that I could use for steps, and then I would, whether I started my first step on the right-hand side or the left-hand side with my left foot or my right foot, I was looking up and I was trying to see how few tree steps I could use to get up that tree. But anyway, I don't remember if I was getting into the stand or coming down. This has been a long time ago. It's been 30 years probably. But I was coming, whichever way I was going, I had my one hand grabbing a branch that was probably about 3 inches in diameter. And I had my foot on a screw-in step, and I was taking a step up. I took my foot off of the bottom step to climb up. I was up the tree 15 to 20 feet too. And so all I had contact with that tree was my one hand around that 3-inch branch, 1 foot on a tree step. And as I took my other foot off of the step it was on, my foot slipped totally off of that step. And all of a sudden I'm hanging by one hand from that 3-inch branch about 20 feet off the ground. And it's a good thing I was in good shape and didn't weigh a lot, because I was hanging by one hand for a few seconds as I swung over and got a hold of that tree with the other hand. But I've had that was probably the closest call I ever had to falling.
We've had a lot of friends take a fall, and even our new friend Emerson Day, the Christian music artist, she had a bad fall and almost died. We'll have to get her on the show sometime and tell that story a little bit. But man, how times have changed with our equipment today, with the nice climbing sticks and stands, or a nice 360 blind with a heater. It's we've definitely been able to invest in equipment by now that we didn't have early in the days. But yeah, I remember the old 2x4 stands, and then when they get mossy, they get that film on it, they get real slick.
Yeah, we didn't have Novix climbing sticks back in those days.
I remember the first time you used a Novix climbing stick, and you said, "This is the only way to go from now on."
Those things, I mean, whoever designed those was a genius. I like how those steps can flip to either side.
Yep.
And they're rock solid. Once you get them in place, they're rock solid, but you can flip them steps to one side or the other.
Well, how times have improved for our hunting conditions and equipment. So, all right, well, let's move on to our listener submitted questions. We got quite a few good ones brought to us by Midwest Land Group. Again, week after week, we talk about it. They are looking for employees. They are looking for solid men, women to represent their organization as managing partners and realtors. Please go to their website and look at their career opportunities and tell them Chasing Giants sent you. We'll be right back.
Don't risk your most valuable asset with a part-time agent. Most real estate agents are part-time, working another job, trying to scratch together a few extra bucks in real estate as a side gig. Their inexperience will cost you thousands at closing. Not at Midwest Land Group. They only hire full-time professionals. Their agents are passionate about the outdoors, highly trained, and committed to maximizing the value of your land. If you're interested in selling your land, don't risk it with a part-time agent. Visit MidwestLandGroup.com.
All right, our first question comes from Vince Anello from Mattoon, Illinois, right down the road from me. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for what you do. Your words help mentor so many young men and fathers, not only in the deer woods but through life, myself included. Thank you. This question is for both Don and Terry. I recently heard an informative podcast about Mitch Rompola on Illinois' Learn to Hunt podcast, episode 35. Being a fan of Don for a long time, I couldn't help but see some similarities in Don and Mitch's stories and how public scrutiny follows success. What are your thoughts on the Mitch Rompola buck? Do you think that Mitch's buck is a fake? Or could you see someone like Mitch just not caring about the notoriety, money, fame, and just hunting for himself and the chase for giants? Mitch did kill a lot of giants. What are your thoughts? Well, Vince, I appreciate the kind words. You said you're a fan. You live right down. I know exactly where he lives because his address was submitted there, which we keep out. But I'd like to meet you sometime, Vince. Actually, we don't live that far apart. But in regards to the Mitch Rompola buck, well, first of all, this is the first time I've ever been compared to Mitch Rompola, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But Mitch. Here's the other thing. The older I get, I just don't like passing judgment on others because so many people have passed judgment on me, and they're totally wrong in regards to thinking that I've done things wrong or illegal in the taking of, some of my bucks. And, local, the rumor mill, be it local or even on a bigger scale, social media, has been pretty brutal on me at times, and I'm guessing that's what Vince is talking about. And I know I've been falsely accused, which really makes me hesitant to just throw out an opinion about someone. And Vince mentions a particular podcast where they was talking about the Rompola buck. Well, it caused me to go and look up that podcast and listen to the whole thing. I've heard stories from people that supposedly seen the buck. I mean, I've literally talked to people one-on-one who claim that they saw the buck after he shot it and swear it's the real deal. I do believe the buck existed, and I'll leave it at that. How he came to get it, there's some things that are hard to believe, but I'm not saying they're impossible or not true. I'm really up in the air on the whole thing. I'm 50-50. It's like, I can't believe someone would allow their name to be tarnished if everything they're saying is true. I just have a hard time with that because I know how I would react. If I was being accused of something falsely and I had proof positive that I could clear my name, something that I could clear my name with, I would be throwing it out there. And it's hard for me to imagine that somebody does not care about their reputation that much, that they don't care what other people believe. I've got a hard time believing that someone would sign some kind of an agreement like Mitch signed with Milo Hansen, that he would not, I think it was something to the effect that he would not claim his buck was a world record and would allow Milo Hansen to do that. That's just not something that typically a person that's completely honest would do. But at the same time, there's enough people that saw that buck. Now, whether that buck was killed where it was claimed to be killed, how it was claimed to have been killed and all that, I don't know. I'm just going to, I guess, not give too much of an opinion because I've just been in the shoes where people have wrongly accused me and I didn't have the ability to prove them wrong, or I obviously would have. And but Mitch is a totally different situation. He had the opportunity to prove all the naysayers and the haters wrong. He could have just stepped forward with that buck and said, here it is, go x-ray it, whatever. I know one thing, for many years, I dreamed of killing a world record buck. And I don't know that I would want to kill a world record buck now. I think the scrutiny for whoever did it would just be so intense that, I mean, you better be ready to prove everything. I mean, everything. You better have the kill on video to start with, because if you don't have it on video, somebody's going to say you shot it at night, or you shot it where you wasn't supposed to be, or something. You used the wrong illegal weapon. They're going to say something. So you got to start where you got to have the kill on video. And then you better take a law enforcement officer. In fact, I would take multiple law enforcement officers and probably a bunch of preachers with me to the kill site so that they can all swear that it was legit. Maybe even see if the Pope's available. And it just goes on and on. I mean, the equipment you used, you're going to be accused of, whoring out your name and trying to make money with products that weren't even involved. I mean, I just don't know that I'd want to shoot a world record today. Do I want to shoot giants? Absolutely. I hope I kill another 200-inch plus buck this fall, but world record, now that's going to bring on a level of scrutiny that even I haven't faced yet, and I don't think I would want any part of it.
I don't know enough about the people are going to laugh and think that I'm lying about this. I've never studied the story. I don't. I know the buck, I know the picture, I know there's controversy. I don't have enough information either way to even know about all the details you just referenced. But I like one of the things that he said when Vince asked the question, and I'm going to read it again. Could you see someone like Mitch not caring enough about the notoriety, money, and fame, and just go hunting for themselves to chase giants? Aside from the rest of his question, I want to talk about that because you and I had a conversation about our friend Bobby Worthington in the truck, 2 days ago. That Bobby is unquestionably one of the most ethical men that would never, for the sake of the sport, not the law, but for the purity of the sport. When I was listening to you read that question, I thought back to our conversation about Bobby in the truck the other day, and that's a perfect example of a guy that would not want one monetary thing, not question one piece of notoriety, but do it for the right reasons. So those guys are out there.
And the thing about Bobby is I've heard people bash him. I've seen online people bash Bobby. And if Bobby Worthington is going to catch heat, I'm telling you what, there's not a person on this planet that's going to escape it.
The Pope.
Because he absolutely does not deserve it, without a doubt. But, he does not say in there, he says what? He would not. Do you believe it's possible that someone would not hunt for the notoriety and such? But he doesn't say anything about, can you see someone not caring about their reputation?
Yeah, that's not the question that I was referring to.
If someone cared about their reputation and had the ability to clear their name, don't know that I've ever met the person that would allow their name to be dragged through the mud.
When the facts are that clear, supposedly.
Right.
Well, thanks for your question, Vince. Maybe we'll run into you at Rural King one day in Mattoon.
Actually, look me up sometime, Vince. We'll have lunch. We're not that far apart. So, next question comes from John from Danielsville, Georgia. He says, I've had the pleasure of having my question read before, so another free super cool t-shirt isn't required, but my neighbor just obtained deprivation permit and was granted 10 antlerless deer tags. I know it is not as bad as 50, but it sounds like a lot of dead fawns due to coyotes to me. I was wondering what your opinion was on our DNR giving out these tags in areas that are filled with trophy-minded individuals. Not sure I've heard you touch on this topic much. Stay awesome, and God bless. Well, John, you live in Georgia. I'm not sure if your property's in Georgia or if you're in Illinois, because you said, what do you think of our DNR? And I don't know if you meant ours being you and me or Georgia, you fellow Georgia deer hunters. But anyway, the Illinois DNR just went, or it's not the DNR, it's actually the legislature, and I never heard if this passed or not. I know it did pass the Senate, but the Senate passed a bill to make it easier to get depredation tags in Illinois, where this time of the year, a landowner can get one of these tags and just go out and indiscriminately shoot deer right and left. I think there is a limit with each tag, but I think the limit it may be like 20 deer. So a farmer or whoever could just go out and with a high-powered rifle, I don't think there's any limit on the weapons that can be used. He can go out with a high-powered rifle that's not even allowed during hunting season, and he can indiscriminately shoot deer at a time of the year when the does have little baby fawns, not half-grown fawns. We're talking day-old, week-old fawns, and just let these deer lay and rot. Doesn't even have to try to recover them. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's absolutely a terrible management practice for the resource. I think if these states did a better job of managing the hunting seasons and the deer herd, this wouldn't be necessary. But what happens, in Illinois anyway, in a lot of cases, is it's the politics get involved, and I'm not blaming the crooked politicians, although they're a part of the whole problem. The problem in Illinois is the Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau is the most powerful lobby in the state. The Farm Bureau represents farmers, and most farmers want the deer dead. And I get it. They're eating their crops. They're costing them money. But at the same time, the Farm Bureau has lobbied in the past for no limit on non-resident hunters in Illinois. And you're probably not going to like this part of the conversation, Terry, as being a non-resident hunter in Illinois. But what happens in a lot of cases is non-resident hunters come to Illinois en masse, and they lease up farms, lots, thousands and thousands of acres, and these farms become sanctuaries for deer for most of the year. And then these non-resident hunters come in, and for a week, maybe 2 different weeks during the season, they're deer hunting, but the rest of the time, these farms become off-limits sanctuaries to all other hunters. And the other thing is, these non-residents come in and all they want to shoot is bucks, and especially big mature bucks. And I don't blame them. Don't get me wrong. I'm just telling you what the problem is. So they've tied up thousands and thousands of acres that become sanctuaries for 50 weeks out of the year. Maybe 2 weeks they get hunted, and they just become havens for these does where they live safe and they never get shot. Well, then spring comes around, and where do these farmers plant their fields? Well, what the heck's going to happen? All these deer are going to be out there eating their crops. And it's just one of the side issues that goes along with non-resident limits and other management ideas. I think in Illinois, before you kill your second buck, we're allowed 2 bucks per season. I think before you kill that second buck, you should have to tag a doe. But we've got too many, and this is this is more resident hunters, not non-resident. This is on the side of the resident hunter. These guys are out there. They shoot the first buck they see. They've got meat in the freezer now. Most people don't want a bunch of deer. If they have 1 or 2 deer, that's all they care about for the year. And so they get their first deer, which is a buck, and then they've got their second buck tag, which they trophy hunt with, but they never shoot a doe. And if a guy was forced to shoot a doe before he could shoot his second buck, that would alleviate thousands of does across the state. I mean, every year it would result in thousands more does getting shot. And it's just a mismanagement on a whole lot of different levels. Right. And it's not just resident hunters. It's not just non-resident hunters. It's not just the DNR. It's not just the Farm Bureau. It's not just the legislature. It's all those things combined have never sat down at the table together. And I would love to sit down with these groups, a representative from each of these groups, and come up with a better solution for managing this state's deer herd. Shooting does when they've got a week-old fawn is a absolutely pathetic management of the resource.
Yeah.
You agree? We'll move on. Michael Finks from Joplin, Missouri says, Don and Terry, first of all, I want to say that you guys are an inspiration to a lot of us. You guys continue to be good disciples for Christ while seemingly always under attack from jealous haters, which leads me to my question. I see you both, and Don especially, constantly being attacked and accused of various negative things. Have you ever considered that these attacks are Satan-driven because he doesn't like the positive impact you guys are having on God's kingdom? I also wonder if some of your hunting success is because God likes what you guys do with your platform and the fact that you stand boldly even when the attacks come your way. Thoughts? That last part, I've actually had other people suggest that they think I'm blessed because of how we use the platform. So I don't know that God operates that way, really. Now, on the Satan side, I do believe that's probably part of it. I think that Satan knows our weaknesses, and that's where he goes after us. That's where he attacks us. And I hope Terry's dad has a sermon on that in one of his upcoming podcasts. But Satan, he knows my weakness. He knows Terry's weakness. He knows your weakness. And that's where he's going to come after you. And my weakness is my reputation, especially as it involves deer hunting. And if someone wants to say something negative about me, there's plenty of factual material out there for them to do so. But when they tell lies, that's when I start having a real problem. And there's been plenty of lies made up and spread about me. And that's my weakness. When somebody does that, I want to go off on them. So, yeah, I think probably, Satan knows he doesn't like what we're doing here. Obviously, I mean, just look at what we was just talking about earlier. The thing that we've done, we've done 277 podcasts now, and the topic that we've touched that has had the most response was divorce and remarriage. Brought on by a little incident, at a seminar I was given. I mean, that just shows you that people, we're having an impact. And the devil doesn't like it when we're having a positive impact for the kingdom. And at the same time, I know a lot of that negativity also comes from my own actions, because a lot of times, especially in the past, I'm trying to get better, but a lot of times I've not reacted the best to certain situations. In fact, just today I had lunch with a listener of the podcast. Never met the young man before, but he sent me an email. He called me a role model and said, it was his dream to have lunch with his or meet his role model or whatever. And so I made the time today to have lunch with him. And he told me, he said, I've listened, I started last November, and since November, I've listened to every one of your podcasts, every episode Chasing Giants. And he said, I listened to them in order. And he says, I think you probably said some things.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by ASIO Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Over that 5 years, and things you would say 5 years ago compared to today, and I hope he's right. I hope that I'm a better person today than I was even a week ago. And I hope next week and next year I'm better than I am today. But so I've made plenty of mistakes in the past, so I bring on some of that myself. I'll be the first to tell you my reaction to some things that happen is not always the best. But I do think Satan's involved. Now, whether God is blessing me with big deer because of how I use my platform, I don't really know that I want to go there. Again, I hope Terry's dad covers this topic because I think it'd be real interesting.
Listener-submitted question.
Well, there you go. I'll submit the question.
I don't know that I believe that God does that. I don't think that there is the ability to bargain with God. I think, I've caught myself early in my career praying to God, you do this for me or you answer this prayer and I'm going to do this in return. I don't think it works like that, and I don't think it works if we genuinely do something but I think that when you surround yourself with the right people, the right things, it increases your odds of good things happening. And I have no doubt that the reason that I've been successful in the deer woods is because I've surrounded myself with people like you and other friends of ours that I've learned from. And, but yeah, I don't buy the fact that, you do something good with your podcast and all of a sudden you
shoot a big deer.
Yeah, but I will tell you in full transparency, what this question is asking is my biggest fear for my dad. Because, he was in the ministry in a pulpit for over 50 years, and church situations aren't perfect, but nobody would stand up and yell from the back hateful things like, I know we're going to get on social media. And, anytime there's social media, YouTube, keyboard courage, as we call it, give everybody an opinion and an outlet to be hateful. And I don't think my dad has ever experienced that as he's taught. When he teaches theology classes in Bible college, people are paying to be there. When he goes and teaches or preaches at a conference, people are choosing to be there. And this is the first time my dad's really been out there on social media and YouTube. And I'm really worried, to be honest with you. And I know people say I protect you. It's probably going to be even worse with him. So that's my biggest fear, because I think Satan's, we have this platform, we're going to open up this other show to try to be a ministry. There's no doubt that Satan's going to use and try to figure out ways to discourage. And, I don't know. I'm very worried for my dad. He's never experienced what you and I have to deal with from the public eye.
I'm very anxious for your dad. I'm anxious to learn and to not only learn, scripture and how he interprets various scripture and all that, but also to learn how he's going to handle what you're talking about. Because I think he can set the example for a lot of me, for one, but for a lot of us. How he, even if he chooses to reply, he may not choose to even reply, and he may have to ground you from the computer, but it's going to be interesting because, I explained that at lunch today to the young man that I had lunch with, that because of my background, and I haven't even gone into it ever on this podcast, things that happened in my life when I was younger, starting down a long story here, but I reached a point in my life where I just was not ever going to take anybody's crap again. I'd taken so much crap at one point, I just said, I'm done. I'd rather get in a fight and lose the fight than take the crap that I'd been taking. And it stuck with me, and as much as I try to get past that, it flares up every once in a while, and you'll see it on social media, all of a sudden, Don's been a good boy for 6 months, but somebody says something and he flips out on them. Well, yeah, that's the old Don coming out, because you don't know the background that brought him to that point. Way decades ago, before Facebook and social media even existed. And I just think it's going to be interesting to see your dad navigate all that.
Yeah. I mean, he's dealt with a lot of hard situations, but never what we have to deal with. And I don't want to play the martyr, Don, because we've been very fortunate and blessed with a lot of things due to this show. And when a cost of that, there's a cost of doing business. You put yourself in the public eye, you open yourself for it. And I think we do better today than we did 5 years ago with dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean it still doesn't tick us off that it happens. And you take far more than I ever do. Everybody just usually complains that they don't like listening to me. It's I don't know. You got a whole lot more of it than I ever got by exponential, but yeah, it ought to be interesting. I'm excited.
Well, you know, the other thing, I think it's gotten better. I mean, here in the last 6 months or so, I don't think I think the people that really don't like me are not listening to me, and they're not replying to anything I say anymore. Maybe it's because I blocked about 6,000 people on social media. I don't know. But I think the other thing is I can look at the people that are close to me today, people that I deal with every week, and I think the quality of those folks, their integrity, their character, is higher than it's ever been in my entire life, the people I've hung around with. And that's not a slam on the people in the past. It's just part of it is today I'm around older people. You know, when I was younger, I was around younger people. And my character and integrity when I was younger was not near as good as it is today. So that's a big part of it. And I think just that alone has made things easier in the last 6 months or year.
Yeah. Well, let's save the last two questions for next week, and we're running a little bit over on time. Make sure that you've gone back. We've released 2 of the 3 episodes from the FAE Sportsman's Classic, the Shipshawana show. 2 weeks ago, we released the video of Gene and Barry Wenzel. Last week, if you're listening to this podcast on Sunday or after, we released Bobby Worthington and Joe Miles. And this week, we're releasing yours and Al Foster's episodes. So after the Sunday night prayer time, which we'll get ready to start here in just a little bit as we close out the show, those listening on the audio platforms can stay on for a second hour and listen to Al Foster and Don Higgins' seminar. And those watching on video will either see it Tuesday or Thursday. I can't remember off the top of my head which day I scheduled it for, but that will be on the Chasing Giants YouTube channel. And on Wednesday morning, episode 1 of the Chasing Assurance podcast.
Yep. So it's Father's Day, Terry. We're releasing this on Father's Day. So I want to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Keep your priorities in order and, take care of those kiddos because they'll be gone out of the house before you know it.
I can't think of a better way to do Father's Day than starting a whole new ministry with your dad. That's awesome. Pretty humbling.
Yep. So anyway, God bless everyone. See you back here next week.
That's what this book, this holy, sacred book is about. God's spoken. He has revealed himself. So when a question of faith comes up, we ought to go to the Bible. When a question of morality comes up, we ought to go to the Bible. When a question of fellowship comes up, we ought to go to the Bible. Because it's there in this inspired, infallible, inerrant book that we have an authoritative voice from heaven.
Happy Father's Day, everyone. Well, the dads out there, happy Father's Day. Tonight I want to talk about investments. Different type of investments that as dads, or as men, or just humans that we invest with. But mainly on the dad side of things. Not any human, when it comes to investments, there's things that we'll invest in our life. We'll invest in a house. What about retirements? It could be a pension, 401k, Roth IRA, rental properties, or just property in general. Bigger purchases are a whole lot better off if we think of them as investments, or that's how we coax ourselves. Another example would be hobbies and hunting. Do I really need that new bow? Well, if I buy that new bow, it's going to last me another 5 years. Or 10 years. I'm investing the money now and it's going to pay off in the long run. I don't know anyone who likes to go buy camo yearly or every time a new garment comes out, hey, we got to have that, we got to have that. But I could invest. If I'm investing this is really going to pay off one day, or I'm going to fill in the blank. If we look at things as investments, as a hobby, it's easier to spend the money. What about your career? I'm a mechanical contractor, so anything Milwaukee fuel, I'm a sucker for. But if it's going to make me better at my job or more efficient at my job, I'm going to invest in it. And it could be, maybe you deal with computers and software, whatever it may be. If it's going to help you or become more effective at your job or get that next bid or make this project easier so you can bid it with less time, you're going to invest in whatever it may be. What about our kids? And I'm not talking about a house or food or clothes. That's just called being a parent. That's what we have to do. But the extra stuff, a huge one with school-age kids is sports. Whether it be softball, baseball, basketball, hockey, football, track, archery, racing, you name it. Those all cost money. Now, most of the stuff is kind of, I would say, almost free to get into. But you want to talk travel ball. I mean, I know several people who deal with travel ball, and that's expensive. They're either driving 10, 12 hours or on a plane every other weekend going to different games. I mean, that's an investment. Batting lessons, pitching lessons, clinics for football. You know, there's quarterback clinics, receiver clinics, defensive clinics, and I'm sure there's clinics for every other sport out there. And we have no issue investing into our kids if it's helping them excel. If they have something that we can bring out and make them better, I mean, we want our kids to succeed. We see something in our kids that not everyone sees. But if we can see that and we can expose that and push them to that, go for it. I mean, I've got several real good friends who are real big into travel ball. And there's colleges flying in to watch their kids play, and they've sunk all kinds of time and effort into it. And now they're nationally known softball players in that league. That's awesome. I mean, I stand anytime and try to encourage every time I can. I mean, I'm so happy for them. But what are we doing to invest spiritually into our children? Because the day's going to come when the trophies are going to tarnish. They'll be thrown in a box somewhere in your garage or shoved under a bed. What are we doing spiritually now to invest in our children that will pay off in the long run? I look at the spirituality in children like I would look at my retirement. I'm going to put in now so it pays off in the end. Same thing with, buying the rental properties or Roth IRA, anything like that. What can we do now to pay off in the long run? With my sons, what life can I live? What can I do right now to invest in the spiritual side to pay off, and that they will remember and mold them into the men that they need to be, or they can be, and I hope they will be when I'm dead and gone. Because I'm not always going to be here to bail them out. I'm not always going to be here to pay for one more lesson, or build that race motor another 30 over, or fill in the blank. We have to invest in the spiritual side of our children a whole lot more than I think most of us do. And a couple things we can do to do that. First and foremost, live a good Christian life. Everything we need to know is between these two covers. And unfortunately, that's the hardest book to read, according to most. Nothing is confusing if you just take your time and go through it. You don't have to read it cover to cover in 5 days, 6 days. I don't really think you could, but go through it. Because all the answers we need, how we need to live, are between these two covers. There's a big push right now. It's really scary, actually. I see a lot on Facebook about, I don't need church, me and God will work this out. Church is a huge one, and some people may disagree, but church has been the biggest thing for my son. Yes, I live a Christian life, but he has so many questions. He's a 5-year-old. His mind's a million miles an hour. The questions he asks, and I can explain 90% of them to him if he was 30 years old, but he's not. He's 5. I deeply lack the ability to take what's in my mind on a spiritual side of things and explain it in a way a 5-year-old can. And sometimes my wife will call me, hey, Carson asked me about this and I don't really know how to answer it. And I'm like, oh, I don't either. So maybe it's a call to a Sunday school teacher. Church is so important in developing a child. it's just from the teaching standpoint. There's teachers that can teach to those levels at all different ages. I help out with the college class from time to time, some of the college kids. And one of the guys that teaches our junior high kids, he's going on vacation for a couple weeks, and I'm going to be filling in for him. At that age, I can communicate with you. At 5 years old, I can't. And I see a lot though, well, the Bible never says go to church. Well, you're correct. It doesn't say those words one after another. But I can tell you, and I had to make some notes because there were a lot of them on this. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The gospel accounts of Jesus' life. Acts, the day of Pentecost, the forming of the first church, how the original church began. Romans was wrote to the church in Rome. 1st and 2nd Corinthians, the church in Corinth. Galatians, the church in Galatia. Ephesians, Paul wrote that while he was in Rome to the churches of Ephesus. Ephesus was a big area. There were multiple Christian churches in Ephesus. He wrote letters to all of them. Philippians, the church at Philippi. Thessalonians, the church in Thessalonica. When Paul wrote to the book of Timothy and Titus, when he wrote to those two, Timothy, that was a instructional letter on how the organization of a church, how it needs to be formed, the group of people. Titus was, Paul wrote to Titus while Titus was helping the church in Crete, I believe. So, I mean, we have example after example after example of churches in the Bible, and that's just one thing that we can do to help out our kids' spirituality. But again, just living it out, being that person, because we're not always going to be here, guys. As much as we want to live forever, there's going to come a day that our fathers will pass away. I mean, my father passed away unexpectedly a couple months ago. So I'm 34 years old, I'm sorry. That was a very short period of my life that I had my father with me. So in those 35 years, it was what can he instill in me in that time to turn me into the man that I need to be. Or in my sense, with my sons, I may not be here tomorrow. I hope I live till I'm 90 years old, 100 years old. I would love that. But if my time's cut short, or I pass away in the next 10 years, what can I instill in my son in the first 15 years of his life that can set him up for a future in heaven? And it's, again, guys, it's not just talking about Jesus or teaching them to say God bless or sharing cute little memes on Facebook or little scriptural quotes around every single picture. Anybody can do that. We all do that. But what are you doing when you're not on Facebook? What are you doing when the cameras and lights aren't on you? What type of life are you living? Because it's that lifestyle. You know, when I have a bad day, how I react to that bad day, how I treat my kids, how I treat my wife, my kids will see that. And if I'm struggling with something, you know, the exact problem that I'm having, I may not be able to find that exact problem in the scriptures, but I can find an example of it and use that example to help guide me through. And that's something I need to teach my sons as they grow older. I mean, one is 5 and one will be a year old next week. So this Father's Day, I just want to ask you guys, what are you doing to invest in the future of your children on the spiritual side? Because at the end of the day, if they don't know and have a relationship with Jesus, their batting average doesn't matter. The number of wins that they have in any sport or touchdowns, or were they in the 1,000-point club in high school, none of that matters. If they don't have a relationship with Jesus, none of that matters. So tonight, guys, let's close this out with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time to come together and share your word. Lord, I pray that everyone out there listening tonight takes a good look at themselves, including myself, and saying, what are we doing to invest you into our children? Where are we falling short? What are we doing that we need to improve on? What short time we have with them on this earth, we need to connect them with you. Dear Heavenly Father, we pray for all those that are involved with Lester's Feet, everyone involved, all the children and people that they are helping out, Lord. Lord, please forgive us of our sins. We give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray.